Alrighty, guys. Sorry for this one being a little bit late. Let's say I had a bit of a Sunday sleep in, and then decided, even though it's not spring, to do a little bit of spring cleaning, stuff that you wouldn't normally do when you're flat out during the middle of the term. So, anyways, today we're going to look at some questions that involve finding values of trig expressions given other information about those trig expressions. We're going to have two problems because they're shorter ones, and then one more for you to try at the end. Okay, so first problem. Given that cosine of pi minus 4 alpha is equal to negative 1/3, find the value of sine of 3 pi over 2 minus 2 alpha all to the power of 4. Okay, so this one I've solved using Desmos, just to visually sort of get you to understand what's happening here. So first up, if we look at the cosine graph, and then we look at the cosine of pi over minus x graph, what do you notice? You should see that the cosine of pi minus x is just negative cosine. So this first bit of information, where cosine of pi minus 4 alpha is equal to minus 1/3, that would tell us that cosine of 4 alpha must equal positive 1/3. We just replace the x there with 4 alpha, and that's where we get that result. And then we can use the double angle formula, because we know that we're heading towards 2 alphas in the question itself. It said find the value of something that had 2 alphas. So if we reduce this down by using the double angle formula for cosine 4 alpha, we can rearrange this and get this expression here. So starting off with the information we're given, we've now got some other dependent information. And I'll put that in blue because we're going to use that later. Note we don't in these questions, we don't actually have to find alpha. If I went and square rooted this and said cosine 2 alpha is equal to plus or minus root 2/3, I would then need to think about the quadrants and go, okay, is it the positive or the negative? But we'll look at that in the second question. Okay, secondly, the find the value of part. We have the sine of 3 pi over 2 minus x graph, and you see it's just a negative cosine graph. So this information here, the stuff that we're trying to find, we can again replace the x with 2 alpha. And just turn it into a negative cosine of 2 alpha. They're the same thing. Now, in both of these parts, if you didn't realize that graphically, you could expand this cosine pi minus 4 alpha. You could expand it using the compound angle. The pi would make the sine pi bit 0, and you would end up getting the same result, cosine 4 alpha equals 1/3. So you can use the compound formulas, or you can use graphs to understand. Okay, last, negative cosine 2 alpha to the power of 4 is the same as cosine squared. So we can sub our information in that we found in the blue box into here, and the answer is 4/9. Okay, second question. Given that cosine of 2 alpha equals 1/3, now we're told that alpha is between pi and 5 pi over 4. That's the third quadrant. Show that tan of alpha plus pi over 4 is this beast. Now you can't just cosine inverse 1/3, divide it by 2, find the alpha, add pi over 4, tan it, and go, hey, done. It doesn't work as simple as that. Sometimes your calculator will actually give you the wrong value as well, because we need to think about the quadrants in this question. So where are we heading? We're heading towards finding tan of alpha plus pi over 4. We can use the compound angle formula to realize that to find this value, we need to know what tan alpha is. So we use the double angle formula to get cosine 2 alpha down into alphas. And then we need to understand that cosine alpha will be a negative number because we're in the third quadrant, and cosine is negative in the third quadrant. This gives you tan of alpha equals 1 over root 2. If you weren't sure how the heck I got that, well, it's pretty simple actually. Just draw a triangle. Don't worry about the negatives or positives on your triangle, but just get the fact that tan is opposite over adjacent, so 1 over root 2. Because we're in the third quadrant, tan is positive in the third quadrant. All strippers turn cold. T, the third quadrant, tan is positive. So we've got 1 over root 2. Chuck it into the formula and do a little bit of timesing top and bottom by root 2, rationalizing, and there's your answer. It actually turns out that that's what the calculator gives if you find the alpha value and then sub it in. But remember, it doesn't always happen that way. Alrighty, last problem for you guys to try.